Breakfast. Intermittent fasting is becoming a really popular term. First started playing around with intermittent fasting like 6 years ago, and it was actually what led me to becoming interested in eating a ketogenic diet. Right? The benefits of intermittent fasting being that you get into kind of a mild ketotic state. You're restricting food intake for a large period of the day, which allows your body to tap into some of that body fat, burn it effectively, and you're kind of dancing on the outskirts of ketosis. Now, intermittent fasting can be a tool that can be leveraged very effectively to reduce hunger, to reduce meal frequency, and induce satiety, and could be very helpful for metabolic health, for some people's digestion, and for many issues that people deal with as far as body composition, health, and metabolism goes. But it's not a magic bullet. Right? The marketing of intermittent fasting has come to this kind of ridiculous level of repetition. And I like to keep things in context. So very often when we get clients that come to us, or in our group community coaching, or Keto and Carnivore collective group coaching that we do every month, we get questions about meal timing. And a common theme that I see, especially among women who think that they've stalled on a ketogenic diet, is that they're intermittent fasting very often when they maybe should reconsider. The meal timing of the intermittent fasting routine that they are doing very often can be in direct opposition to their chronological clock, to their circadian rhythm, and to proper entrainment of that circadian rhythm to maximize fat loss, metabolic health, and hormonal health. So remember, in the morning we wake up, the light hits our eye, that triggers mechanisms in our body, the light goes through the iris into the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain. That triggers the release of cortisol. That cortisol is not inherently bad, but if that cortisol stays elevated for several hours throughout the morning, we can get detrimental effects to our circadian rhythm, our hunger and satiety signaling, our blood glucose levels, and our general health and metabolism, as well as our inflammation levels. So dropping that cortisol in the morning through having a meal very often can be super helpful, especially in certain subsets of the population trying intermittent fasting, especially when combined with a ketogenic diet. Remember, a lot of people are doing a ketogenic diet for fat loss, same with intermittent fasting. A lot of people jump into it with the idea that they want to lose as much fat as possible as quickly as possible. This is a fallacy very often, because we have to understand that in order to maintain the fat loss, we have to maintain a foundation of habits that can allow our body to maintain the form that we're trying to get. Right? So if we're trying to lose body fat, we've got to make habits that we can keep in order to keep the body fat off. We can't just expect to do intermittent fasting or ketogenic diet for a few months, lose some weight, and then jump back off of it. People get so zealous and so excited to get the results, they start doing a little bit of research online. They watch the big jacked guy on YouTube tell them that you gotta fast, you gotta do intermittent fasting. Very often these people are not taking into context or taking consideration of the context of the individuals taking their advice. So like premenopausal women, postmenopausal women, mothers with children who are not sleeping very well at night, people who've already got significantly high cortisol and stress don't usually do that well with intermittent fasting. Okay, so we just had our first meeting of our November Keto and Carnivore Collective yesterday, and one of the common themes that we see in the questionnaire form that we send out before with this group is that a lot of the ladies have been forcing the intermittent fasting and majorly stalling. Now, every single month when we do this Keto and Carnivore Collective, it's like clockwork. We see at least 5 to 10 people in our group who have been intermittent fasting, who get off the intermittent fasting. Often they're also eating insufficient protein, right? People are afraid to eat enough protein. They don't understand that we've got minimum requirements for protein. They've been told you've got to keep protein low on keto because gluconeogenesis, which is a misnomer, right? A lot of these people are under eating protein, skipping breakfast, having elevated stress hormones and cortisol throughout the day from just drinking coffee until like 1 in the afternoon, and they're not getting the results they want, and they're crashing after that first meal. So I'm not saying that everybody needs to eat breakfast, but there are many contexts in which it is quite important to get that first meal in early in the day to entrain and set the circadian rhythm, to allow yourself maximum absorption of nutrients and digestion, and to avoid intense hunger throughout the day. A lot of the times what happens is people wait until they're so hungry to get that first meal in. By the time they get that first meal, the meal ends up being bigger than they would have wanted, and they don't feel as good afterwards. They're getting a crash. So simply skewing that first meal to a little bit earlier in the day, having breakfast, instead of fasting till 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're hangry and waiting to eat then, sometimes, especially in certain populations that have high stress, high cortisol, disrupted circadian rhythm, hypothyroidism, right, Hashimoto's, I've noticed that especially among these people, eating in the morning can be really, really helpful for dropping the hunger levels and for breaking through stalls. So, I'm not saying every single person's got to eat breakfast in order to make progress, in order to be healthy, but there are people who are not going to benefit from the classic dogma of just have coffee in the morning, push back your first meal as long as you can, just eat like 1 meal a day. It doesn't always work that well for everybody. So, if you're a mama and you're waking up 3 times in the middle of the night to nurse your child, like Jessica has been for like the last 6 years, alright, she's just now weaning Ryder. Her sleep is still disrupted. She finds that if she fasts too long and doesn't get breakfast in within a few hours of waking up, that her day doesn't flow as smoothly. She ends up not being able to control her hunger and her energy levels as well, and she gets the classic symptoms of insulin resistance and blood glucose dysregulation. Simply getting breakfast in the morning, in many cases, can completely alleviate this and bypass the unnecessary suffering that some people, especially ladies, can go through with intermittent fasting. Now, of course, intermittent fasting is a powerful tool, but it is not the end-all, be-all, only tool to lose body fat. It's not going to make you lose weight in absence of calorie deficit. Now, I'm not just saying calories in, calories out, that's all that matters. Count your calories. That's shit advice. Right? Obviously, not every calorie is the same. 1,000 calories from steak is going to be treated very differently than 1,000 calories from some Soylent Slop vegan powdered crap made by Cargill and Monsanto. Alright? 1,000 calories of steak is very different than 1,000 calories of sugar and soybean oil. So to say that calories in, calories out is everything is nonsense, right? You can't just tell someone, oh, go restrict your calories. That's horrible advice. It doesn't help anybody. We've got to tell people how to eat and allow them to manage, how to eat that allows them to manage their hunger, to manage their satiety levels, and to maintain stable blood glucose in order to get the fat loss they need. And this requires sufficient protein. So pushing too hard with the intermittent fasting, as well as getting insufficient protein and overeating the fat, is a very, very common mistake that people make when trying to lose body fat on keto. So don't fall into the pits that have been laid out for you by all the clever internet marketers out there who are just jumping on the fat train. There are 1,000 different brands of zealotry out there to tell you this is the only way, that's the only way, you gotta do it like this, you gotta do it like that. I'll be the first one to tell you that it's not true, that there's just one way to go about it. It is all about context, right? We've all got minimum protein requirements. We've all got a circadian rhythm that is intimately tied in. Our internal clocks are yoked not only to our natural light environment, to the light exposure that we get throughout the day. Our internal clocks are also set by food intake and by the timing of our meals. Chronobiology is the study of the timing of the biological processes. And we need to understand that there are optimal meal timings for different contexts. An athlete has a completely different nutrient timing necessity than somebody like me who works online, who does a few minutes of exercise per day, usually less than 2 hours of intense exercise per day, depending on what I'm doing. I need much less fueling, much less frequent meals than many intense athletes. But that doesn't mean that all intense athletes have to eat 5 meals a day. I know many dudes who are total savages who are getting by on 1 to 2 meals a day. Right? Sean Baker, breaking world records, or about to break a world record on a Concept 2 rowing machine, has deadlifted more than most people would ever dream of as a natural lifter. This guy eats 1 to 2 meals a day with 0 carbohydrates and 0 plant foods and does perfectly fine. So it's about context, and it's about your own individual response to the meal timing. So not everybody needs to push back breakfast as far as they can. Obviously not everybody needs to eat breakfast right away when they wake up in the morning. But very often when I see people stalling, when they're trying to get adapted to a ketogenic diet and they're just not feeling it, they're wasting their money on exogenous ketones, they're not getting sufficient protein in, they're skipping breakfast and pushing it back till 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon while drinking bulletproof coffee in the morning, which is giving you an exogenous source of fat, so you're not burning your own body fat. These mistakes are so common and can definitely keep us from getting the results that we desire and deserve. So intermittent fasting is a tool that can be leveraged very effectively to reduce hunger and thus improve insulin sensitivity, blood glucose stability, and metabolic health, and lower inflammation. It's a powerful tool. It's not the only tool necessary. And sometimes the timing of the meals can be way off with how gurus are out there teaching it. So figure out what works for you in your individual context. If you're having troubles with intermittent fasting, getting adapted to a ketogenic diet, and you're a woman who's not sleeping very well at night, maybe have a high stress lifestyle, if you've got hypothyroid, Hashimoto's, autoimmune conditions, perhaps skipping breakfast and pushing it back as far as you possibly can might not be the perfect way to go about it. Alright? So it's about what works for you. Yeah, breakfast isn't exactly the most important meal of the day. Not everybody needs it right away in the morning, but some people will function way better when they do get breakfast within a couple hours of waking up. And that's why we teach in our Keto and Carnivore Collective, very often in the beginning of a ketogenic diet, it is best to avoid intermittent fasting. So anyways, if you want more, you can check out more at primaledgehealth.com. If you're interested in the next Keto and Carnivore Collective, we actually just started the November session. The December session will start in a few weeks. You can sign up down below. We use a live Discord server, and we do several live interactive lessons and voice chats per week. We do live Q&As, and you have a community-based coaching setting where people get to support each other, bounce ideas off of each other, and learn from each other as well. And it's not on a Facebook group. We use a Discord server, and it's a really fun way of going about it. So if you're interested in private consultations, you can hit us up for that as well. But I do recommend that you go towards the Keto Collective route, because you actually get much more time, much more value, much more content, much more interaction and support that way. But I know some people are shy and they just would rather talk to me on Skype and we figure something out. That's fine as well. But I only have so much time to do Skype meetings, and the Keto and Carnivore Collective allows us to do it in a fun, dynamic, community-based setting, and coach people and help many more people for more affordable price. So anyways, you can find more at primaledgehealth.com. Intermittent fasting, not a magic panacea, not a magic tool, won't work outside of caloric restriction, proper food choices, and a decent circadian rhythm. So stop taking the dogma as gospel and figure out what works for you. Maybe breakfast isn't necessary and you can wait till 1 o'clock to eat it. But maybe, just maybe, getting breakfast in within a couple hours of waking up will better suit you. Alright? You can find more at primaledgehealth.com. Get off the computer, get off the damn iPhones, kill your Facebook account, close your stupid ass Netflix account, and go live your life in the real world.